Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys know who it is. This is Tony Lynch. I am the host of this podcast, and yes, we are your number one podcast for bringing you conversations around death, dying, and grief, and all the messiness that comes in between with some exciting people who not only walk the walk, but talk the talk, and out here changing people's lives one heartbeat at a time. And now, before I bring on my next guest, I would like to say that if this is your first time tuning in, do me a favor, head on over to that YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. But most importantly, this is a live stream. So if you have any questions or comments for either myself or the guest, please put them in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer them as we go. Now, before I bring on my next guest, I would like to say that this is for educational purposes only. Okay. Now, without further ado, guys, help me welcome my next guest. She is freaking amazing. Lisa, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Tony.
Most definitely. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is exciting. I am just it's such a privilege to get to be on your show. So thank you.
Man, the privilege goes both ways. You know, you give me the opportunity to share your story and be a part of this amazing journey that you have been on. And we talked, and I was just like, "Whoa, this this is going to be really, really awesome." Now, before we get into your story, introduce yourself to the audience. Tell people who you are, where you're from, and about the work that you do.
Sure. So I'm Lisa Bischoff. I am from Colorado Springs, born and raised, and still live here and absolutely love it here. And I have a company called Fit to Exist where I work with people on total transformation, body, soul, and spirit, where soul includes mind, will, and emotions. And so my passion is just to help people. I say we live in a world where hurt people hurt people. I want to be part of a world where healed people heal people. So that's my passion, that's my journey, and that's my mission.
And that's a great mission to have because, in the state of the world that we live in now, we need a lot more healing and compassion and empathy for our fellow brothers and sisters out here who are struggling right now.
Mhm.
And you have an amazing story, right? We talked, and you took me on this journey with you. So tell people how you got to where you are today.
Oh, Tony, and it has been quite a journey, for sure. So my journey, I trace it back, and it started all the way back in like the fourth grade, right? That's when I wrote my first software program, and I was considered, I guess, accelerated. When you're in it, you don't see it necessarily. Looking back at all the pieces, it's like, oh my gosh, wow. So thankful for that. Well, by the age of 14, my parents had bought me my first computer, and I learned how to hack phone lines. I would just sit there and was using all the abilities and all the things I knew. At the same time that I was hacking phone lines, I was using them to win radio contests and starting college. So, and that wasn't super common back in 1994. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I started my college. My getting in there, and I did that concurrently with high school at the time, and I would go on to get my electrical engineering degree, and I often joke that I stole that too, along with some other things that you'll hear about throughout my story. And so yeah, so I got my electrical engineering degree, my bachelor's of science in that, and I would go on to meet at the age of 21 someone that would become my best friend at the time, and it was somebody that I just was so excited to be friends with. She was somebody that was in my mind, it was like being on, I watched Beverly Hills 90210. I grew up watching Dynasty, and she was that person that was going to help me get to that lifestyle, right? Like we had
Yeah.
VIP to the nightclubs, got to go to photo shoots. She was a model, and it was amazing. But along with that, I would also meet people that included con artists, mafia figures, and criminals. And so it's kind of start to learn about these other lives and get ingrained with them. And eventually, her and I were no longer friends. But by the age of 27, I find myself $1 million in debt, making six figures as an electrical engineer, but I couldn't sustain my lifestyle. My thing was never drugs and alcohol. It's always been expensive, shiny things. And so, yeah, age of 27, a $500,000 house and trying to figure out how to sustain a lavish lifestyle with motorcycles, expensive cars, and just everything. So I went and hacked a database, and it was the database at Colorado Springs for a former company I'd worked for. And I was on a business trip and deviated from my original plan. I saw an expensive, shiny thing. I saw this beautiful Porsche. It was a 2002, but it was $92,000. Now, mind you, maxed out on credit. I have no money, but I really get fixated and like, I have to have this. There was an identity I had stolen on a previous business trip and decided I'm going to see if I can I didn't plan it. So I was like, I'm just going to see if I can get away with it. And bad idea. And so at the time of trying to purchase the car, I would be arrested. And in my backpack had my computers and hard drives, which contain the database of Colorado Springs. I get arrested in Arizona on a business trip. My family comes and bails me out. Within 24 hours, I'm arrested in Colorado Springs and all over the news for what I did with the database. And they're looking for more information on me. And one of the things that I don't share it often, but they thought I was like a crime ringleader, which I thought was very fascinating. They're like, who works for you and who's helping you? And I'm like, nope, it's just me. It's just me doing this. And I'm not doing it well, obviously, because I've got caught. But so 2007, I destroy my professional career. No longer employable as an engineer, lose my security clearances, and nobody would hire me. I spent 30 days in jail in Arizona as part of my sentencing there. Colorado Springs, it took a long time to process my case here. I think it was 2008 by the time it got processed. And here, I didn't serve jail time, but had a lot of community service to do. And I wasn't allowed to use smartphones or computers for like 2 years. And try to do my community service. That's a whole other story, but nobody would let me do anything because it was theft of information and I was a thief. Like nobody wants you around because they can't trust you. And, so it made things hard. At that time, my parents were like, go do something. Don't just sit at home. Go, please go do something. Don't, because there's the chance of becoming very depressed and all these other things. And so I started playing golf and loved it. But the problem with that was all the people I was meeting was pulling me right back into that lifestyle of expensive, shiny things and wanting to keep up with my friends. Some of them made over 40 million a year. And I wanted to hang out and do all the things they did. So over time, I would be hanging out and starting to build this lifestyle. And by 2012, I am able to start volunteering at my church, which was amazing. And I just really fall in love more and more with Jesus. And I grew up Catholic. And so I knew the Lord, but I didn't have a great relationship with the Lord. And in 2007, at the time of that arrest, I did start going back to church. And so that helped. But 2012, game changer, because I get to start volunteering. And that was just amazing. And I loved it. By 2015, I eventually got hired on at the church as an admin. Loved it. And then eventually I became a director and I got to lead children's services. I got to help develop curriculum. I had my own green screen room. I could film the series, edit. I got to do a lot of really cool stuff, but I was living a double life. So by 2019, I would find myself over $100,000 in debt in my name and in my parents' name. And it wasn't the first time I had done this to my parents. It was the second time. And so I was trying to figure out, how do I fix this without them finding out? They're going to be so disappointed. I don't know what's going to happen. So I mastermind a diamond heist, a jewel heist from a client that I worked for. And at the time, I thought it was only a $200,000 deal from what the client had shared with me years before. And it was just something that sat in the back of my mind as and I never thought I would do something like that to anybody, but in my mind, I was desperate and it was my only way out. So 2019, I start planning this, how to get a hold of this jewelry, and I go through, it was a 6-month deal of planning. And I get away with it for about 4 months. Turns out it was $600,000 in diamonds and jewelry, not $200,000. And it would take 4 months before I'm arrested in September of 2019. And at the time of the arrest, it would be my third strike. And I would be facing mandatory prison of 12 years. And so that was a huge, that was probably, I don't know if I would ever say I've hit rock bottom. In my world, it was rock bottom, but I don't know if it's truly ever been rock bottom. But at that time, I didn't want to be here anymore. And I started looking at ways to go away. I didn't want to go to prison for 12 years. I disappointed everybody. It was like, I blew it. I had a second, third chance, and I just don't want to do this. So I start pursuing contracting somebody to take me out, make it look like an accident. So my parents would get the insurance money. I have a good insurance policy. So they would get the money. If it's an accident, it would get paid out. They basically get a refund on my life and I don't have to go to prison. I just go away. I share that with somebody and they're like, that's crazy. You're not going to do that. We're going to get you some help. And so they send me to a ministry here in Colorado Springs, and my life starts to change. We start with, renewing my mind. We start doing inner healing and eventually deliverance. But that was huge because I'd been through psychotherapists, clinical psychologists, and I always seemed like I got better, but it was just on the surface. And it was kind of like, okay, I'm better, fixed. I'm not going to relapse. And then it would cycle back in. And so 2019, I start that process of going through the inner healing and the renewing of the mind. And I also go for my sentencing in December of 2019. So I'm not really sure if I'm going away for 12 years in prison or what's going to happen. And the judge was so gracious to me. He said, he says, you're not a bad person. That was another huge pivotal point in my life. Was I never had heard that, because I've always thought I was a bad person because I did all these bad things. But he did say, you're not a bad person, but you did a bad thing. And it's not the first time you've done a bad thing. He goes, but sending you to prison isn't going to help. He goes, you have this amazing support system. And I'm very thankful in my life. I do have an amazing support system, but I've always tried to live a facade in these separate lives and keep everything hidden. So I never would ask for help.
Mm.
So at the time of my sentencing, I had like 30 people, I think, in the courtroom. I had letters written in from high profile all the way to I called them my friends, the Desperate Housewives of Colorado Springs. I had a lot of support. So eventually I ended up serving 2 weeks in jail in January of 2020. And that was a miracle. And I also returned 400 out of the 600,000 in diamonds and jewelry. And the victim forgave the rest of it. That other 200,000 that couldn't be recovered, and the damages, because I could have been facing up to like 300,000 in restitution, and it was forgiven. I ended up paying, I think, 10,000 with court fees and everything. So a lot of blessings. There was a lot for me. My story is a God story. God was there the whole time helping me. And when I was arrested back in 2019 September, I was mad at God because I was like, I'm over here serving in ministry. I'm over here doing this. Why can't you give me a pass? And it was like, no, God saved me. And so one of my taglines for some of the work I do is deliverance by diamonds, because I got caught for the diamonds. God delivered me and totally started changing my life at that moment. I just couldn't see it at the time because I was mad at God, but we worked through that. So
It's very true. And, in a lot of ways, I think it's expected, right? Because we can't see the full picture when we're inside of the picture. A lot of times we have to hit some form of rock bottom and get pushed outside of it in order to get up and go, oh, okay, well, here we are, right? But then you can begin to put the pieces together. I forget who said this. I want to say it was damn, I can't remember his name right now. But the phrase goes, you can't put the piece together the dots when you're standing in the picture. You oftentimes have to stand outside in order to connect them, right? And I base a lot of my life around that concept now, right? The last 6 years since I've been in this field of grief and wanting to be the best at what I do, right? And expand my knowledge on so many different levels, and to be able to help others normalize and understand that what you're going through is totally normal. So now, which helps me pose the question, because you said a couple things, and I want to just unpack one at a time right now. You know, the thought of taking yourself out, right? Because that's the first time I've heard someone say, I was going to hire a hitman to take me out and make it look like an accident. What phrase of your emotions were involved in that thought pattern, that thought process?
what do you mean by phrase of emotions?
Well, because we go through different phases, right? So, say for instance, when I decided to plan out my suicide, when I decided I was going to take my life, there was a phase of emotion where I justified it by saying, no one cares,
Mhm.
right? No one would care if I took myself out. Look at my life. I made every excuse in the book, right? I said, look at my life, you know what I'm saying? And because I didn't have anything, right?
Sure.
Everyone I knew was gone, right? So I was like, it's just me now. So who would really care if I disappeared? And that emotion was confusion for me, right? And it was depression,
Mhm.
as well as pity
Mm.
for myself and the world that I lived in. Again, I was inside of the picture, I wasn't outside of the picture. So what was the phase of, or several phases of emotions that got you to that point?
Sure. So if I'm answering this correctly, this is what's coming up is I was very angry with myself because I failed. The biggest thing is,
Mm,
and that's my biggest thing I deal with on a regular basis, is that fear of failure, right? And it's I failed. I failed everybody. I was given another chance. I was reckless. I failed myself because I didn't succeed at this crime. I failed everybody else because now they have found out I'm this, this horrible person. And, something I've learned, and this came up yesterday in a counseling session, was and it's still a struggle, but it's something we're working through, is my self-worth, that
mm,
insecurity and feeling that I am of worth. It's really interesting to feel like you just really aren't. In my eyes, I wasn't worth it. I wasn't worth it to be here. I was better off dead than to be here on this earth, because I wasn't serving anybody. I was in massive debt trying to fix it. And I end up stealing from this client that was actually my friend. And, I disappointed everybody. It was just kind of that, it was a very low point. But yeah, the biggest thing was I was angry with myself, feeling worthless. And I don't know if there would be maybe pity, but it was more that I failed. I failed, and there was that voice in my head that says you might as well just give up because you're not going to make it.
mm.
Where do you go from here? You were given another chance. People believed in you, and you blew it. And that was a hard truth. I mean, at that time, that was my truth. It was a lie. I made a mistake, but it still is. I mean, it was very real, what I was going through and feeling.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that totally makes sense, right? Because just like yourself, my biggest thing nowadays is failing at what I do, right? But now I also embrace it because I understood that imposter syndrome is real,
Mhm,
right? And so I do embrace the failure because through every failure, I get closer and closer to where I want to be.
mhm,
And I and in a lot of ways, it excites me now, right? And there's a few things that I still have to work on, trusting myself to go through the process that I need to go through, but also trusting myself to surrender the things that bound me to security, to
mhm.
be uncomfortable in the other aspect, right? And to be able to explore both avenues and follow the path that has been laid out for us. And I think and I want to get your thoughts on this. What do you think is the biggest challenge for people nowadays that are maybe stuck in that lifestyle?
And when you say lifestyle, like of like self-doubt and fear, or
Self-doubt, fear, maybe someone who is going down the same path that you've taken.
sure. So a lot of it is getting to like for me, it was getting to the root of why. Why
Mm,
was there that desire to what was the draw to the expensive shiny things? And it all went back to people pleasing, which then was rooted in rejection. So that
mm,
fear of being rejected. And again, it all truly, everything for me has stemmed back to fear. And I heard it well said. One of my friends that co-leads that's part of Life Reimagined, we were on a retreat, and she said fear can be defined as the acronym, false evidence appearing real.
mhm.
And it's so true, because if you were to actually look at it, like the things that we're fearful of, they're very minuscule. You know what I mean? They actually hardly ever happen unless if you totally focus on it. Eventually, yeah, it possibly could happen, but really, if you don't give it any attention and just move on and move forward, you have a much higher success rate.
I love that. I love that. And now you was actually on the news too, right? I remember you telling me that you was on the news, police chasing you on TV.
Well, that was yeah, well, they were chasing me, but it was this was in 2007. I had to cut when I got back from Arizona, that 24 hours before I was arrested here, I had to get a
Mhm.
driver's license because they confiscated all my IDs because they weren't sure if they were real or not because of the identity theft. So we're at the DMV for like an hour and a half, and I'm like, this is taking a long time. And one of my friends was with me. So we're driving to their house because I had to get rid of I was a competitive shooter. I had to get all my guns and things out of my possession. So my friends were like, we'll take everything. And while we were driving down the road, all of a sudden there was a caravan of police cars. There was undercover. And this was in March of, I think, 2007. but it was everything you could. I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And they didn't arrest me at the time. They said, we just want to talk to you. And I was like, okay, like I would have just come in. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was nuts. Yeah. So that was a wild incident.
See, I was thinking about that because, knowing the person, getting the chance to get to know the person that you are now, it's like, wow, I would have never had saw you in that um in that situation. But of course, like understanding a little bit more about your past,
Mhm.
because I myself, at a very early age, I was involved in selling drugs, right, and guns as well. And the people that I was involved with, so I can kind of relate, mafia types, the Colombians, the Jamaicans, Haitians, etc., right? And so growing up in that lifestyle in that environment, it kind of grew me to understand the way that the world really works in those different aspects. Was it the same for you? Like once you got involved with these individuals, what I'm saying, was it kind of like learning as you go or sitting back and just observing how people move?
It was all observing. I was not ever like involved in their like day-to-day stuff, but I saw a lot. I saw like some of the craziest things was, like you hear stories like you'll say, oh, there was a stabbing at a nightclub downtown. And it was like,
Hmm.
they weren't random. Like the more I knew about these entities and how they operated, it was like, nope, somebody was intentionally taking somebody out and they covered it up to make it look like it was a bar accident. Like I would see how they covered and how they made accidents happen. And it was like, that was how that world worked. There was a
Hmm.
lot of drugs there. I watched the other guys that would con women, and it was just horrible. They had different addresses. They would have their mail sent to other places, and they would be running cons on women that were like widowed or just wealthy women. They were trying to siphon all their money, and it was just a different world.
It really was. And now I want to get into the exciting part of your whole journey has been exciting. All the things that you've had to go through and endure in order to get to where you are now. You know, what changed your mind in order to become to start your company? Fit to exist.
Sure. So after I served my jail sentence in 2020, I continued going to the ministry here in town for help, and I did more renewing of the mind, the inner healing, the deliverance, and I mean it would go up and down. I mean it wasn't easy by any means. When you're going through that healing process, I mean there's a lot of stuff that comes up, and you deal with a lot. But as I started going through that, things started to really break off of me. I started getting to the root of going to memories and where stuff came in, and that was transformational. And as I started to feel better on the inside, I was like, okay, now what do I do? Like, I feel like, oh my gosh, I feel like I can do so much more, but I don't know what to do with my life because I have all these felonies. I'd have to look at my criminal record, but I think I'm a 7-time felon. So that's quite a few, it's a lot of felonies to have on your record. And
Yeah.
I think I can get half of them expunged and half not because of, I think state of Colorado won't let me, Arizona would have. But it's like, what do I do? So I went and hired a coach through Tony Robbins, and she was the most amazing coach I had. She really helped me start to get direction and figure stuff out. And with that, I started my fitness journey because I was 225 pounds at the time of my arrest. So I was physically very heavy, oppressed, depressed. But we started going down that path of I still had a passion to want to compete and eventually, take stage in fitness or figure to compete. So as I went through all that healing process, I eventually I felt like God released me from that ministry, and I got plugged in to start writing my book. And that would have been in 2023. And then one of my mentors plugged me into an entrepreneurial program. And that's where I started to launch Fit to Exist. But I didn't have clarity on what I was going to offer at Fit to Exist. I was like, I want to do inner healing and counsel people because I was counseling people when I left the ministry, which I absolutely loved because as I was helping people get their healing, I was getting more and more healing. It's such a
Mm.
cool thing when you're helping people in that capacity. And I loved it. So I was like, that's what I want to do with Fit to Exist. Well, what happened was, as I was in that journey, I met she's the number 3 body language expert in the world, Tracy Brown. I met her at NSA, National Speakers Association, and she goes, I want to have you on my podcast because of your criminal background. It's called Truth, Lies, and Cover Up. So I went on her podcast. It was the first time I really told my story in a real big public way that was going to be shared all over. And in my entrepreneurial program, somebody heard the podcast, and it was one of the other entrepreneurs. And she goes, I want your transformation. I could totally relate to you except for the criminal stuff, but everything you've been, I want what you got. So can you help me? And I said, that's it. That's the program I'm going to design. I'm going to take my background because I've been certified as a personal trainer since 2009, but my weight would go up and down, and you can't be a non-fit personal trainer. It's just not good marketing. And it's not, why would somebody listen to you if you're out of shape? It's not good. So she said, I want what you got. So I developed a program where I combined the personal training, the inner healing, and the life coaching, and put it all together as a transformational package. And that was how Fit to Exist came about.
Mm. I love that. Wow, I love that because we've talked before, and I'm a former bodybuilder that going back on stage this year, and everything, and I love the process of just getting in shape. But of course, I love the process of putting on muscle. And I don't think that part of me will ever will ever change, especially being personal trainer as well and things like that. It's a process that you go through mentally, the discipline, et cetera, right? And you've had some really great mentors, Tony Robbins. I mean, wow, that's truly amazing, the opportunities that you've been presented there. And what was the journey of becoming fit like for you?
So it was interesting. I struggled for a long time because I was just sharing this with my parents. I spent like literally as I was going through my healing process right after COVID, and like everything was kind of up in the air. I remember I didn't get to really do a whole lot for like a year. And I just remember I kind of sat in my room as I was trying to figure life out. And so it was like something shifted one day, and somebody told me about this program, and I started doing this fast mimicking program, and I would lose like 10. It's a 5-day program, and I would lose 10 pounds, and then I would gain back 5. So I started doing that, and as I did it, and this was with the help of my Tony Robbins coaches, she encouraged me. I was like, okay. I started to feel better in my body because it was doing cell renewal and everything, and eventually I went back to my personal trainer, and he helped me decide to set a goal. And that was where I started focusing on training for to compete in figure, which was a goal I've had since like 1996. I wanted to do Fitness America. Fitness is a little bit out of my reach because I've got screws and pins in my left knee, but yeah, it's a passion I've always had. And I'm so thankful to be able to have competed this last July, and I'll be competing in 4 weeks.
Nice. Yeah, we talked about that. You're really at the final part of your prep, and and then we was talking about just dropping the carbs and having to deal with the mentality of being able to deal with that. Do you find that 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 has been an integral part of your healing, or just a piece of it?
No, I would say it is definitely one of my non-negotiables. But that didn't really happen until I started seeing the results. And that's probably the hardest thing for people, right? Is
Mm,
you start. And it was, like I said, I think it was like 6 months into doing these fast mimicking program, when I really started to feel my body feeling better. And that's when I went back to my trainer and then really started to implement a full-on program to truly pursue being very fit. Um, but yeah, I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning every day to start my daily routine. And yeah, my gym time is a non-negotiable for me, for sure.
that's for sure. That's for sure. Now that leads me now to my next question, because there's a lot of healing that needs to go on, right? A lot of becoming more self-aware of regulating your nervous system and things like that. Was it a difficult journey pinpointing where all of these things came from and actually going back and healing those things?
When I was going through that at the ministry, I always looked forward to my sessions because it was like, what's going to happen today? What is God going to do? Right. And I'm like, and the way I explain it too to clients is we get hurt in layers, kind of like an onion. So for me,
Mm,
my healing journey is I'm healing in layers. It's like layer by layer. There are some people that get healing like that. I'm apparently not one of those people, but that's okay because my healing journey, I believe, is God is using it to help me help others through the process. And so, yeah, I look forward to it. I'm in a different I would say now I'm in a different season with a much higher level of counselor that I see, as there
Hmm.
was some trauma that presented from when I was little that nobody knew about. And so that's been interesting going into that and trying to figure out how that has impacted my life and where I am now and what triggers some of the things that I work through.
Right, because that's part of the journey when I help men navigate this world is going back and healing that child, that inner child. And the reason being, and I'll never put nobody's business out there, so I speak from my own. My inner child was always angry.
Mhm.
My inner child was always in survival mode, and it took me almost 40 years to acknowledge where it came from. Well, actually, I would say it took me a lot less time than that. It probably took me 36 years to acknowledge it. And then where that happened, I had my son, and my son was the inspiration for me going back to correct, or to begin to heal and understand where my anger came from. And those a lot of people that know me from my past, I was a very violent individual,
Mhm.
and that's why I chose a lot of things I did in life, like far as martial arts and boxing and MMA and things like that, And it took, let's see, I think I was like 15 or 16 where I found my love of lifting weights.
Mhm.
But I lifted weights because I wanted to get stronger, because I wanted to pick people up and throw them across the room type thing. So you got to be real careful about those things. But that inner child can affect the way I want to get your thoughts on this. But that inner child, if that inner child is not healed up until your teenage years, going into years, it can really affect how our relationships with individual, right? It can affect the way that we show up in life and
Mhm.
on so many different aspects as well. Um, but everybody's different. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree, 100%. Something that I've come to realize, and it's like, it's super unfortunate, but I'm so glad to be aware of it now. But I
Hmm.
truly, probably up until maybe the age of 42, so 2002 for me, or 2022, sorry, I didn't. I didn't know how to really form friendships. My whole life
Mm.
has been transactional, and that's just unfortunately, my family is a very transactional. Everything is kind of, we do this for you, you do this for us. So I never really learned how to form friendships that weren't based on some kind of transaction.
Mm.
It's crazy because I have friends that I've had since college, and I'm so thankful for them because it's like, oh my gosh, you've been through a lot with me because you've had to navigate the way I have handled our friendships. And I will admit, like, most of my friendships were super toxic just because I didn't know what it was like to be a real friend to somebody. So that, like I said, it's just been the last few years I've really been able to build real friendships and relationships. But a lot of that is from my childhood. Like, that was just, everything was transactional for me.
Nice, and that totally makes sense. Which leads me to my next question: becoming a co-founder of Life Reimagined. What was that experience like?
So yeah, that has been probably my most favorite. So I love Fit to Exist. Fit to Exist, when it as it developed into what it is now, it's geared towards one-on-one clients, right? And I was like, I can
Hmm.
only help so many people at a time because it maxes out my schedule. Like I max out at 8 people, and that's the max I can help. And as a speaker, being on stages and getting to see people get transformation, like in a big group, that was super powerful. And I was like, I want to be able to help a lot of people. So Life Reimagined, one of my friends, amazing lady, she totally championed me and said, okay, Lisa, you need to do a retreat. One of my clients said, Lisa, I'll give you the retreat space to use. Go launch this and figure it out. And so November, I launched Life Reimagined. I got 7 of my other friends in various areas to help me make a retreat happen on a weekend. Loved it. But I found it was hard to work with 7 other speakers. And so from there, I kind of went through, and there was a few people few of the team members at that time that actually attended a meeting with me for NSA National Speakers Association. And I was like, okay, these are my people. So I invited all of them. I said, would you guys, could we be co-founders and continue to do these retreats every 90 days? As we build it, we'll figure out, how to make it work, profitably for us. But for now, it's going to be a building phase. So there's going to be a time investment and us just working together. And I tell you, Tony, I am so thankful. The team, there's myself and three other individuals. They're the most amazing people. They're all from different areas. And I believe we've figured out how to help people get transformation in a day and a half. I had one lady after the last retreat in January, she launched an ebook, like just her life like took off like fire. And she said, this is what I needed. And I was like, those are the stories we want to hear. I'm doing a live right after this with one of our other participants that's been at all of them. And her life is totally different. And it's like, that's the things I love to see and hear is I love the transformation I've had. I want to help people get that and getting to partner with others. I love it. And it's been interesting because one of my coaches, my business coaches says, stop getting partners. You're not going to make any money. And I'm like, I'm not about the money. Like I won't do it if it's just me on my own. But when I get to work with a team of people and we get to do something together and have this impact, that gets me excited. And eventually I know that it'll come together. I'm never worried about that. I truly believe that, like Tony Robbins says, the secret to living is giving. And I truly believe that. And so being a co-founder it was great. I opened up the door and said, would you guys just like to be co-founders with me? Because we're doing this together. I'll do whatever I need to do, but I want you guys I want us to share everything, and do this and build it.
I love that. That's very inspiring, very encouraging. So now leads me to my next question. You wrote a book.
I'm writing a book. Yeah, it was written a year and a half ago. And it's been in editing, because I used some different types of software as my editors, and it
Mm,
dehumanized my book. So when we went back through, it turns out when I write, my content comes out, it flags for not human. So we're in the middle of doing edits for it, but I believe we're going to call it, Hack Your Healing, a guidebook for inner healing and deliverance. So it's actually my journey, and all the different prayers and the strongholds. It's my God story. How did God bring me from 2019 to here? And these are tools for people to be able to use and hopefully help them.
I love that. Now, do you think that your life that you've lived set you up for doing what you do today? Understanding software and, all the things that you've done, um, like, and to get you to where you are. Do you believe that your life set you up to serve in the capacity that you do?
Sure. Yeah. And it's as we talked about, like it's hard when you're in it. Like you don't realize, like, I actually had the privilege of doing team building with the Denver Broncos years ago. I've done
Mm,
all these crazy side jobs just to be able to try to figure out how do I make money? Like how do I, in between things. And all of those pieces have been put together. I started off as a volunteer at the ministry. I was getting healing and then became a counselor. Well, that now allows me to go in and do ministry. And, I get to be a part of Youth for Christ, and I'm actually part of their board. And so I go into the detention centers twice a week and do ministry. But then that opened up the door for me to take a fitness program in. And so I do that, for 5 hours a week at one of the facilities here. And it's all volunteer, but it's like actually one of my most favorite parts of the week is the youth have told me, they're like, we never worked out really before you started coming. And now we work out in our cells. Some of them are like, yeah, we stopped doing drugs because we want to make sure we can do your challenges on Thursday when you come. And I was like, to me, that's like one of the coolest things. And I love it. I love it. Very thankful for that.
wow, and very thankful that you are out there doing that because our youth definitely need some guidance and things like that. Was it hard to get into the penal system to go in and help the youth like that? Because I know for me it was very challenging, especially working with Laramie County and in Denver and Loveland and all of those. Is very challenging because I do have a background,
Sure.
but it was also beneficial because of the things I experienced through gangs and you know um, the the experience from being a former drug dealer and gun dealer and all of those
Mhm.
different things, right? And I have to say, I'm right there with you. Working with those men, working with those young youth, and everything it's very rewarding, very fulfilling.
Mhm.
So. What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. So that was a total God thing. So when I was a director at the church that I was on staff at the time of my arrest, like I had a youth junior team that I would do team building with, and they would help me run the services, right? And I
Mhm.
loved it. That was one of the biggest things I missed was after my arrest was I was like, I don't know if I'll ever get to go back into working with, youth and ministry. And I believe it was 2 years ago, 2023, I think it was. I was writing up for National Speakers Association to the Academy with another gentleman from Colorado Springs because it's up in Denver. And he starts telling me, yeah, my wife's parents started the chapter for Southern Colorado Youth for Christ. He goes, you should consider volunteering. And I was like, well, I don't know if they'd let me. I'm still on probation. And, I don't know. He goes, well, if you're interested, I'll help you. And so that was how I got in there. And I had to
Mhm.
do a lot of background checks because the facilities, because they are government facilities. And I flagged. I mean, there were, I would get the phone call of, okay, now all these red flags are popping up. We know your story. We know your background. We're willing to help you go in and do it. So it was people taking a chance, and it was a miracle to be able to go in and do that. And then I just happened to be at one of the facilities one time when we were doing a prayer walk, and the director came out and says, oh, you do CrossFit? And I was like, no, no, I do Fit to Exist as my company. But he goes, well, would you come in and do a fitness program? And so it was just people building that trust and people being willing to take a chance.
Nice. Now, my next question, I'm pretty sure there's some people here that want to hear this too. What are some of your biggest inspirations in your journey now?
Oh man. Gosh. I mean, like, okay, like my number one goal in my journey, and this is probably it is my hardest goal, but and I'll share it. I think I've shared it once before. My true passion is to be like totally 100% sold out to Jesus. Like that is I want to be to that level to where, he's number one in my life. But it's interesting because it's one of the hardest things for me to do. I get up and I do my prayers, but I spend more time at the gym than I do with my prayer time with God. And so that is something I am working on because Jesus is amazing. I mean, I look at every single thing in my life. It is the favor of God. I'm here because of God. My office I have here, I've been open a year and a few months. I started with one office. I have 3 offices and a commercial gym. Like that was all by the grace of God. And so that is truly that is my number one. In terms of like people here though, I've had some amazing mentors. One of the guys at my gym, he was the first one to put me into one of the entrepreneurial programs, and he's always willing to meet with me. And this guy, I call him my $100 million mentor. He will meet and help me anytime. And that's been amazing. Another person that's been so instrumental that truly does inspire me is one of our other co-founders for Life Reimagined. Her name's Aiki Chan. I met her at a business conference. We sat down. We were the only two people that brought our lunch one day, and she goes, "So, I start telling her my story, and she kind of was like, "Oh my gosh, who am I sitting across from?" And that's how she tells the story. Who did I just get stuck at this table with? But the crazy thing was she's helped me develop my keynotes, my framework. She has championed me every step of the way. I get a text from her just about every day. Like, Lisa, how are you doing? How can I support you? How can I help you? And she doesn't do one-on-one coaching with people anymore. She's like a super high genius. She was her thing is she led a $10 billion tech company. Like she was very instrumental in that. She goes, Lisa, I want to help you get to where you want to be. And so, and I believe like with her and I and everything we're doing, we're going to get there. And so she is somebody that inspires me and encourages me. And it's like everybody needs an Ike in their life. And she's been so huge and so instrumental in where I am. And, I'm just thankful. I mean, I have a lot of great friends, family. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I could probably go on and on, but those are the main people that come to the forefront of my mind. And then the other two co-founders of Life Reimagined, my friend Andrea Bolt and Ken Lewis, like these people are willing to step in and take a chance and come alongside me and build something. And that's amazing to me. And I'm thankful for them. They inspire me. I mean, those are people because I want to do my part and I want to fulfill what we are building and make it really great and big and help a lot of people.
Yeah. Now, I got two more questions for you. Two
Okay.
more questions. I know you probably got to go eat and get ready for gym again and things like that. So I want to be respectful of your
Sure.
schedule. So next question would be, how can people find you?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I have my website, www.lisabischoff.com. You can find me at www.fit2, the number 2, exist.com, like in my over here on that. And then our retreat pages. I mean, you can go to the number 2x.co. You can, if you, I would love to see people at our next retreat. That one's in April. And it's here in Colorado Springs, and it's co-ed, and it's going to be amazing. I also have another one at the end of March, I think it's March 28th and 29th. That's for women, called Queens Arise, and it's a faith-filled Life Reimagined experience where we help women just walk and step into their purpose. And that is at livelifereimagined.com. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to find me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, Lisa_B_CO. And I look forward to connecting and hearing from anybody if I could be of help or service to.
I love that. Now, I got one more question for you before I let you go. And my next question would be, and most people that's been on the show or listened to it, this has been one of my favorite questions I ask people. If you had a superpower, what would it be? Yep, you're muted.
Sorry. If I had a superpower, my superpower, it would be undeniable kindness.
Mm,
Um, I truly desire, I'm human, and, my flesh will get a hold of me, but I truly would just want to be someone that is kind 100% of the time. And just have that, like the grace and mercy of Jesus, like just to be able to see that in people and be right there, no judgment, no, and I would like to say, I would like to say I'm without judgment, but I'm human, and I'm not
yeah.
perfect, but I would just love to walk and be just full and radiate joy and kindness wherever I go and spread that to people. Like that would be an amazing superpower. Um, can I pick one other one? One other one that I heard
Yeah,
of that
most definitely.
Here's one other one I heard of. This is kind of a crazy one though. This was somebody in another ministry. They had the ability. They could see in the spirit realm, and so they could actually see when stuff was attached to people. And so they literally, this guy could see it, and he could walk up to somebody and pray stuff off of people. I was like, that would be really cool. And I still kind of struggle with that because I'm like, I don't know if I always want to see all the bad stuff in the world on a regular basis, but to be able to like help set people free, I'm like, how cool would that be? Like to go change somebody's life in an instant. I mean, I get to do glimpses of that through our transformational, through our retreats, but to be at the supermarket and be like, I'm going to go pray that off of somebody. Like I think that'd be a super cool superpower to have as well.
Yeah, see, that's the beautiful part about having a superpower, right? And I do this every week. Ever since someone asked me this, the first time, I'd had this, I told the person, I said, you know what? I wish my superpower was empathy. And the reason being because I wanted to understand people on a much deeper human level so I can be
Mhm.
able to walk with them in service to other people and, to help them heal, to find their pathways that worked for them. And then, and that was almost 6 weeks ago. And every week, what I found was that whenever I asked myself that question, the superpower changed,
Ooh,
right? And added to it. So that's the beautiful part about having a superpower. If you really want to find out who you are, and again, this is just my thoughts and my opinions on it. If you really want to find out who you are and where your heart is, every week ask yourself, what is my superpower this week? And then you combine it to what's already there,
I like that.
and it begins to form your authentic self over time, right? And all of these, what you will find is that you're growing into who you're supposed to be, right? Because you can't lie with your superpower.
No,
You can't, because it's something inside of you, right? There's something in your heart, your soul that connects you.
yeah.
And so if you make it a weekly practice to do something like that and then show up that week as that superpower, watch how it changes you over a period of time. Conversation, thought pattern, your heart, um, being able to have gratitude and appreciation in some of the most craziest moments. but you will begin to step outside of that picture and see it for what it is, and then go back in and go, you know what? It's really not as bad as what I thought it was.
Yeah.
So one last thing,
Okay.
if you could leave the audience with something, what would you leave them with?
Um, I would say it's never too late, and make the rest of your life the best of your life. Because I truly believe, and somebody spoke this over me, God is the author of all time, so He can restore it. Because I honestly, at the age of 39, at the time of my arrest, I was like, my life's over. I wasted all the good years of my life, and that was such a lie. I mean, I am living the best years of my life right now and so excited for what's to come. And so I truly, every day I get up and say, okay, today's going to be better than yesterday. What are we going to do today? And
Hmm.
that's exciting.
That's very exciting. Well, Lisa, again, as we wrap up this episode of the Grief and Let's Talk About It podcast, guys, I see you on Instagram, I see you on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, Twitch. I see all of you guys over there. Do me a favor, if this is your first time and you have not yet, do me a favor, head on over to that YouTube channel. Scroll across the bottom over there. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. But most importantly, if you know anyone who could benefit from the conversations that we have, please share this with them. Let them know that there's people out here that care, genuinely care, and want to see them heal. Give them support, and go and support Lisa. Go to her channel. She has these retreats coming up, especially if you're in the Colorado area, in Colorado Springs. So no matter where you're at in Colorado, reach out to her and go up there and be surrounded by some pretty amazing people. And if you guys, for the rest of you that keeps allowing me to keep bringing these stories to you guys. Thank you for allowing me to keep doing that. Thank you for your support. I love you guys. We're going to see you guys in the next one. All right. You guys have a great day. Peace.